What's going on, peeps? I hope you all can hear me okay. YouTube, you do a little check-in real quick, make sure sound is good. Yeah, even after the little song, he did her dirty. We're gonna get started in about 1 minute. If you're on Facebook or Twitter, please retweet and share. What's going on, Anna? Hi, Grace. Who else do we have? Do a couple more shout outs. Stephanie, Pat, Cybel. How are you? Who else we have on Facebook? Susan. I see Brian. Barbara. Do a few more. Don't let me forget Twitter. My Periscope peeps. Let me go ahead and mute that. Where my Periscope peeps at? I see Eric's watching. Who else is watching on Periscope? All right. So, like I said, if you are just now tuning in, please make sure to retweet this, share it, whatever you have to do. If this is your first time tuning in, please subscribe. I'm sure you will be pleasantly surprised with some of the news and analysis you get from this channel overall. We have a lot of diversity. We cover a wide array and range of issues, and so I definitely encourage you to subscribe. Most people here will tell you they don't regret it, whether they are on the left or the right. They always gain something from these live streams, and definitely from the videos from our other people as well, whether it be the Convo Couch, Brandon, BC DeGraff with his rigged series, and even our sports section. So I also want to encourage you all, as usual, to, if you have not, make sure you join us on Just Inform and join that conversation. Help us continue to build this evolution in social media that we've started. Thanks to everybody who's already on there. If you've applied, and thank you for waiting patiently as our screening process makes sure that we don't allow bots and things like that, because we saw how much damage they've done on Twitter already. We see how much damage they've done to Facebook. We don't want to have that issue also, right? Thanks for tuning in, and want to go ahead and get started. So I don't even really know how to begin this, because there are certain things in politics that irritate the living hell out of me. Now, there's a long list, actually. I say certain, but the list is long. But it's hypocrisy. It's the Machiavellian tactic of accuse someone of what you've been guilty of for the majority of your career, and then when you ask something of someone else, and then you do not reciprocate when you said that you would, that is like one of the biggest pet peeves of mine. Not because of politics per se, but just because that's one of my biggest pet peeves in life. And so when it happens in politics, especially when we've seen this type of behavior highlighted by the Democratic Party, it gets even more frustrating. However, nonetheless, as usual, the Democratic Party doesn't keep its word. It just continues to prove that everyone who has their grievances with the Democratic Party or are legit in having them and are right for leaving. I mean, in case you have not heard yet, Joe Crowley, who was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's opponent in the Democratic primary election, has left himself on the ballot for a third party. Yeah, people. The same Democratic establishment who says that third parties are spoilers. The same Democratic establishment who said that just because Jill Stein ran for the third party, ran as a Green Party candidate, that she was not only a spoiler, but apparently a Russian bot. The same Democratic establishment that said that anybody who didn't vote for Hillary Clinton or the Democrats were clearly Trumpsters. What makes it even worse is that this is the same Joe Crowley who said, I would give a vociferous and tremendous endorsement and throw all of my assets behind you if you were to win this primary, and I ask you to do the same. He wrote her a song, I guess, or he played a song for her with his band, I guess. And then turned around and left his name on the ballot as a third-party candidate under the Working Families Party. Now, some of you all may be wondering how that is. In some states, like New York, the Working Family Party acts as almost like a separate vehicle, where if you get the endorsement from the Working Families Party, you actually get your name on the ballot twice, if that makes sense. So if Joe Crowley were to win that election between himself and Ocasio, then he would actually have his name on the ballot twice. It would be under Crowley, and it would or Crowley the Democrat and Crowley the Working Families Party candidate. Don't ask me why, but it is. Like I said, it's not like that in every state, but I know for a fact it is in New York because I worked for the Working Families Party in New York. So I have a pretty good understanding of how things go there. Now, he has offered the theory that he just can't take his name off the ballot, except for that is not true, which is why the Working Families Party called him to essentially vacate the endorsement. All the things that he said were true, but there is an exception to that. Like, so Crowley said, well, I can't, if I don't die or if I don't move out of New York, I just can't take my name off the ballot. Except for if you request your endorsement to be vacated, or if you accept the request of the Working Families Party. Now, I will say this also. Working Families Party, what the hell? Why did you ever endorse Joe Crowley so early? I know that there's this weird rift within the Working Families Party. Like I said, I've worked there. They didn't really want to endorse Hillary Clinton. It was like 49 to 50% of the Working Families Party did, but from my understanding, that number was not even true. Most people didn't want to endorse him, which is why they didn't even canvass for her. So the Working Families Party didn't even canvass for Hillary Clinton like they have for presidents in the past and for candidates in the past. So when I say that Crowley is taking advantage of a flawed system with a third party that should have never endorsed him to begin with, I'm not being petty. I'm not pretending that he's being nefarious. I'm saying he knows exactly what he's doing, and it is simply emblematic of everything else we've seen in the Democratic Party thus far. They would rather have a Republican in office than have a progressive. And what this speaks to even more so is the same thing that I've been trying to tell people, that I'm sure people will conveniently ignore this story, right? Because there are people who swear up and down that Ocasio is establishment to the core. She was propped up by the establishment. I said, you all are making this huge assumption about who she is because she got an initial appearance on shows who didn't even know who she was. They didn't know who she was, which is why they brought her on, because she was attractive, she was young, she's going to be the youngest candidate, or she's going to be the youngest representative in the history of the United States of America. Like, anybody essentially would get on television if they did that, especially in this modern era of identity politics. Now, if you continued to watch the interviews, like some of us who care about politics and, moving forward actually did, you would notice that the interviews got a little bit hostile. The CNN started grilling her. And they got more and more hostile. The establishment from both sides started coming after her, and kind of things returned back to normal. Okay. So, but what this particular story speaks to is exactly what you all, or speaks against, really. It's antithetical to what you all theorize, which is, well, the Dems let her win. They would never let her win unless she was one of them. Apparently they're not going to. I told you all, they were cheating. They tried to cheat. It wasn't like they didn't cheat. She was just fantastic in her ground game. And Crowley is underwhelming on top of that. And the demographics shifted into her favor. And she's exciting and electric. And she was grassroots from the beginning until the end. But Crowley's campaign refused to vacate the endorsement of the Working Families Party in order to unite behind Ocasio. You all know this, right? Well, if you didn't know, now you know. Because they tried to get him to renege. He refused to. Therefore, his name remains on the ballot. And according to the Democrats, that makes him a spoiler, doesn't it? I'm waiting to hear the outrage from Joyanne Reid and Rachel Maddow and Anderson Cooper and Wolf Blitzer and Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein. And, if Eric Perez ever wanted to pretend that he's going to try to be objective, this is the point where you step in. It has arrived. Okay? He knows what he is doing, because there are people who donate regularly to the Working Families Party. If they see Working Families Party, they're going to assume potentially that the Working Families, if they haven't been paying attention, right? And they see Working Families Party, enough people who are casually progressive, which there are a lot of those in both New York and California, they'll see Working Families like, well, this must be the progressive candidate, because otherwise Working Families wouldn't have endorsed them over this woman who we don't know who she is. Because they're not going to read this article. They're not going to see this video. They're not going to check the news. They're not going to do their research, and maybe Ocasio didn't get the knock on that door. Do I think it will work? No, I think that Ocasio has generated enough excitement that she will win. But I do think that this is another lame attempt from the establishment to usurp and undermine a progressive candidate with progressive policies. And this is also, it also speaks to what I was telling you earlier. No, can one candidate pass a policy? No, even to get it to the floor, you have to have help. Now, understand something. It's one thing in getting policies to the floor, but it is another thing entirely to be one of those very rare candidates who, the moment that somebody like Cory Booker, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, the moment that the neoliberals or the neocons of the world try and shit on the general public with some BS legislation or some nonsensical earmark, it is a very rare occasion to be able to get a Bernie Sanders or a Tulsi Gabbard, or especially at this point an Ocasio, who has the voice that will carry further than almost any vote individually in Congress or the Senate could take them. Bernie Sanders calling out Cory Booker single-handedly ended his any chance of him having a run at the presidential office, at least within the next decade or two. It'll be a while before people forget about that. It'll be a while for that. Now, for Ocasio to have that type of voice and for her to wield it in such an aggressive way, which I welcome, because she's been on Twitter, she's not letting anybody own her image but herself. Don't you think that may be a little bit dangerous, considering that, well, the Democrats have played the identity politics game for so long that eventually it was bound to work against them? Crowley is like, oh, I've made my support for you right after the election, the day that he lost. I made it clear. But why do you think that his campaign denied the phone calls for a concession speech, at the same time denied Working Families Party requesting that they vacate the endorsement? Because he wants to stay on the ballot. Because he wants to split the Democrats. But I do think that we're going to find something out really fast. Now, he's saying, I'm not even actively campaigning right now. Okay, people, when has Joe Crowley had to campaign really in the last 20 years? He sat in that district quite comfortably, if I recall. Just because you don't campaign openly doesn't mean your goal still isn't the same. Hillary Clinton didn't campaign either. She didn't campaign in Ohio. She didn't campaign in Pennsylvania. She didn't campaign in Wyoming. She didn't campaign. I mean, we can go down the list. Michigan. Does that mean that her goals changed? Crowley is a snake. So in New York, just New York alone, didn't we hear a statement that went a little something like, there's a special place in hell for a woman who does not endorse or support another woman. And yet Hillary Clinton went out of her way, which is almost like the kiss of death. I know Cuomo was like, go back, but went out of her way to endorse Cuomo over Cynthia Nixon. And over on the other side of that fence, Feinstein and Nancy Pelosi both endorsed Crowley early on. Well, no, actually it was later on. So knowing who she was, they still endorsed Crowley over Ocasio-Cortez. The same party that also tried to blame Jill Stein for literally everything wrong with their party. That tried to blame, remember when Bernie Sanders literally came out and vociferously endorsed Hillary Clinton, much to our chagrin. We did not like it at all. I get it. I got it. Still didn't like it. There's a difference. I still don't like it. Okay? They tried to pretend as if Bernie Sanders didn't endorse her right after. And Bernie Sanders, unfortunately, the reality situation is he even began endorsing her before the convention came. Like, he said that he would vote for her. He said that he would urge his supporters to vote for her like a week before the convention. And I was irritated by that. But he held up his end of the bargain. And at a certain point, we have to stop expecting the establishment to hold up their end of the bargain. We have to stop expecting the establishment on both sides of the fence, but at this point, especially the Democratic Party, we got to stop expecting them to have some type of integrity. They don't have any. Their integrity stops at the door where the dividends do. Okay? If the dollar sign is on the other side of that threshold, they're going to chase after that dollar sign. They're going to stay, that integrity is going to stay its ass on the other side. They don't care. Wink, I appreciate the super chat. He said got a raise recently. Oh, nice. Congratulations, man. It's always nice to get raises. Just keep up the great work, comrade. Wink, the Russian troll. I see what you did right there. Appreciate that, Wink. If you have not checked out Winkle the Bernie Bros channel, definitely do. He has some great videos, great compilation videos highlighting some like commentary and highlighting some of the events going on in the political world. So definitely go check out Wink the Bernie Bro if you have not. He's currently in the comment section. So if you're on super chat, or if you're on our chat list on YouTube, make sure that you go check that out. But yeah, peeps, isn't it a little weird? Like, I really believe now, like, so we're seeing this huge tide, right? 90% of the party wants, like, of the Democratic Party members who still were nice enough to stay for whatever reason, 90% of them want the party to be more like Bernie Sanders. This is a recent poll that came out. Even Tom Perez has felt the heat because they had to introduce the new policy within the DNC to push the superdelegates from even having a voice until after the first vote is taken, and there has to be a clear stalemate. Do you think that happened because Perez wanted it to happen? No. Because he sees the way the winds are blowing. Things in politics don't necessarily happen for altruistic reasons. They don't happen for magnanimous reasons. They happen because someone's personal interests rely on a particular person, policy, etc., being passed or not passed. Why do you think the Republicans could sit there and stare at you in your face and say that Colin Kaepernick doesn't support the troops, but those same Republicans denied a 4% raise to the U.S. military after passing one of the most substantial, before this recent one, after passing one of the most substantial increases in the military budget? They then voted against the 4% raise that Obama tried to give the military. You all know I'm not an Obama fan, but I'm just pointing out once again the hypocrisy. They have to convince the public that Obama hates the military. We all know Obama loves them bombs. He loves the military. As long as we're overthrowing people. And they do too. Neocons aren't any different. Do I think that Alexandria is going to be perfect her entire career? No. I don't think that's realistic to think. However, she is very transparent. Transparency is, when somebody tweets like that, there's something like a little psychological test, right? It's like a litmus test for me. When someone can tweet out so frequently, so regularly, and they're not mincing their words, and you can tell it's them tweeting, you start to notice something. It's like, wow, okay, they really feel like this. They don't have anything to hide. When they're not worried about speaking publicly, when they can come on to a show, they can come into an event, they can come on to a stage at the drop of a dime and speak and move crowds and move audiences, it's usually because they don't have to rehearse. This is their life. They live this rhetoric. They live this language. They can't be caught off guard because this is what they truly believe in. You're not going to be able to catch her slipping, if it were. You know, it's because that's how I am. That's how the public speakers that I know that live and breathe this movement, that have this just rabid amount of empathy to the point where they get infuriated by these tactics like what Crowley is doing. When Hillary Clinton tried to claim to be a champion of black people, and then people were saying that Bernie doesn't like black people when he was literally being arrested beside us, being arrested while protecting other black people during the civil rights movement. Like, no. I get irritated. I get infuriated by things like this. What Crowley is doing, I saw the live debate where Crowley said that he would vociferously endorse Ocasio. And he's gone back on his word. Period. By staying on that endorsement. First of all, like I said earlier, Working Families Party, I got to get it together. I liked working there when I did, but there was this really weird neoliberal tension. It was like the room was split. There was a lot of concession, talk of concession all the time. Well, we have to, get our name on the ballot to win elections. So, because they brought in Crowley. I'm not stupid. This is how these things work. They brought in Crowley because they thought he was a shoo-in to win, and therefore they can claim a Working Families candidate won. The problem is they did this with Cuomo before as well, and Cuomo screwed them over royally. They swore they learned their lesson, and yet they did not. Or else they wouldn't have endorsed Crowley to begin with. But the fact that the Working Families Party even endorsed Crowley over Ocasio, knowing her policies, knowing that she was endorsed by DSA, even Justice Dems. I'm not too fond of the Justice Democrat infrastructure, but she got in early, so whatever. She's endorsed by all of these progressive groups, and yet the Working Families Party maintained their endorsement of Crowley even through that election. So that was a big mess up on your behalf. And so if there is somehow a huge splintered vote that benefits Crowley in some way or benefits the Republican establishment in some way, you're going to have to eat that bullet, and you're going to have to accept your responsibility, even though you did call and request that Crowley vacate that endorsement. What did you think was going to happen? He's establishment. So I would love to know your thoughts on this. Make sure that you subscribe, that you like, if you follow whatever platform that you're on right now. Join Just Inform, be a part of that conversation, and be a part of the evolution of social media. You can find a lot of my live videos there as well, especially when I do my Just Inform exclusive videos. So go there for those. Outside of that, please, people, if you're on the left, stop believing the establishment. If you're on the right, like I said, I had that conversation about this walk away movement this morning. Stop believing the establishment. Any movement where they don't unite behind the people, they try to push you into this left, right paradigm, duopolist mind state, this Hegelian dialectic of a mind state where it's, if you're not right, you have to be left. If you're not left, you have to be right. If we walk away from the left, then we have to walk into the right. You walk away from the lava, you walk into the fire. That's what they're trying to push you towards. That's what that movement is about. It is the moment that someone appears on Fox News and all they do is talk about the left, Democratic Party. Like I said earlier, people. Colin Powell came out and said, most of my party is racist. Colin Powell said this. Remember that guy? He wasn't race baiting, I'm sure. Because he doesn't like Democrats either. He's very clear about that also. So you have these fabricated movements on the right, just like you have these newly christened progressives on the left. Nancy Pelosi tried to say she was a progressive, and she, like, her head almost exploded. She's like, I'm a progressive. I'm a progressive, I think. Hold on, what is a progressive again? I want to make sure. Is that a socialist? I can't say that. They tried to downplay her victory, Ocasio. They tried to downplay her victory. They all bolstered Crowley. They lost. Crowley's still running. Clear example that the establishment hasn't figured life out yet. Now, once again, don't let your animosity for a party don't allow that to let you be corralled into some of the ignorance that is being spewed from the establishment right. If we're going to move forward together, we're going to have to do so under a populist banner where anti-war is above all else, where general health care is above all else, where the well-being of our entire society is. If you don't like immigration, guess what? The populist movement is where you belong, because the immigration is spurring from the military-industrial complex, which the populist movement wants to get rid of. If you are for a legitimate path to immigration, that's also a part of the populist movement. If you want universal health care, populist movement. But if you still want some elements to remain privatized, also populist movement. The populist movement is about nuanced discussions. But there's an underpin, there's an understanding within the populist movement that no matter what we want domestically, if we don't get out of the military-industrial complex, if we don't deal with the prison-industrial complex, if we don't have general health care to pursue the liberties that we are entitled to by our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, if we don't essentially treat other countries how we would want to be treated, the golden rule, then all of our domestic conversations, it don't matter. Until we get big money out of politics, it doesn't matter. Until we start holding, if I don't care if you call yourself a Democrat or Republican, until you're willing to hold your own side accountable, not when it's convenient, not when there's an insanely large, like, eclipse of an event like the Bernie Sanders movement or the Donald Trump MAGA movement. Like, we have to be willing to hold our side accountable, you know, realistically accountable. Not like everything they do is like we just going to yell at everybody every time they say something that we don't like. That's not the same thing. But holding them accountable for their intentionality and their actions, a combination of those two things. That means there is no such thing as being able to deny the fact in the populist movement that Trump has indeed ramped up the military-industrial complex. He has not suppressed it. You know, there are a couple of good decisions that he's made, but he's ramped it up. He hasn't suppressed it. He's contributed to the destabilization of Venezuela as much as Obama did, as much as Bush did. He's contributing to the destabilization right now of Brazil as much as Obama did, as much as Bush did, and so on and so forth. If you are not going to be willing to hold him accountable, then do you think that America will be great? Look at our track record of destabilizing nations and what follows shortly after. Eventually, we ourselves become destabilized. America performs as a people, as an economy, at its peak when the rest of the world is actually stable because of the type of economy that we have. So if you're going to be on a populist movement, you have to be willing to hold Trump accountable. Like whenever Bernie Sanders is touting his Russian rhetoric, I have to be willing to say, whoa, Bernie, take a step back, homie. That is not accurate. That's not truthful. And if you want to see if you want to see your movement continue and persist in the direction that it is, don't alienate yourself and alienate the people who were there. And it wasn't a Russian who stole my election from me. It was that Democratic Party that you've been working within lately. Like, we all have to be willing to do that. We all have to be willing to be self-reflective, and we have to be aware of the mechanisms that each party, each establishment wing in the deep state and the shadow governments, what they do to corral us like sheep. The walk away movement is one of those things. This idea, the dim enter and then shaming everybody in the third parties is one of those things. Shaming anyone who stays within the Democratic or Republican Party, although they clearly understand what it means to be a populist, like to be independent. Their rhetoric and their thought process is along those lines. You shouldn't be shaming anybody for remaining in a party for whatever reason. Maybe they just really don't feel like changing their registration because of they know that they won't get pamphlets or whatever from the people that they want to actually see, because changing your designation does affect how people campaign towards you. So maybe that's why they don't want to change it. But if their rhetoric is, I'm going to vote for whoever the best candidate is, it shouldn't matter what party they belong to. We should be growing past parties. And so recognizing the failures of the establishment is the first step towards that. Some people claim that they have, and they haven't. And once we finally get on the same page, and I'm not talking about this nihilist mind state of everybody's the worst people ever. No, there are some great people out there who, in special circumstances, like Bernie Sanders moving from New York to Vermont, which is the only reason he would be able to win in modern era of politics, or not modern, but at the time, at the modern era of politics. There are special circumstances where certain people get into a certain position where they can create a lot of a change. A lot of a change. A flower sometimes can grow in the concrete when it gets enough sunlight. And so just keep that in mind. Make sure you subscribe. Much love to all the people who have already subscribed. And thanks to all our patrons on Patreon. Other than that, people, remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.